our first storyteller of the night. He is the host of How Was It at QED in Astoria. And he was recently at the San Francisco Sketch Fest. We love having him here. He's really funny. Give it up for Matt Storrs.
Oh, hi, everybody. Hi. Oh, fantastic. That's the one we used. Okay. That's me on the right. The one on the left, okay, my left. Okay, you know what it is. I'm the shorter one. Fantastic. Hi, everybody. A lot of people don't know what a Lutheran is, but for me, it was something that I knew from the day I was born because I grew up Lutheran. My grandparents were Lutheran. My parents were Lutheran. I went to church every Sunday, sometimes a couple times a week, and I even went to a Lutheran middle school. Now, for those of you that don't know what a Lutheran is a break from the Catholic Church. It's a Protestant religion. Basically, a bunch of years ago, there was a guy named Martin Luther. He had a bunch of problems with the Catholic Church, 95 of them, in fact. And he in true Lutheran fashion, he confronted them by nailing those 95 theses on a door. And basically, if you were trying to figure out what Lutherans believe, the easiest way to understand what a Lutheran is, or any Christian religion is just to define what type of guilt they feel. So a Lutheran will feel guilty if you invite them to a party and they don't show up early enough to help you set up. That's what I grew up in. And I wanted to be confirmed in the church. That's something both my brothers did, my parents did, everybody did, and I needed to get confirmed. Even though I had gone to this religious middle school and I felt like I didn't have to get confirmed, I had done way more religious study than any of my family members, I felt like I had to do it for my family. And so I went through all the confirmation classes at my church. I did the volunteer stuff that I had to do. And then the only thing left was I had to go to confirmation camp, a Jesus camp, over a 3-day weekend. It was Martin Luther King Jr. Day weekend. It's very important. I was very confused originally. I'm like, we have our own day. And they're like, nope. It's a different guy, Matt. And so I had to go to this confirmation camp. But my parents were like, if you want to be confirmed in the church, you got to do this yourself. And I think, in hindsight, my parents were just a little stressed and busy. But they gave me the list from my church. The choir director was going to go down with me. And they gave me the list of things I had to bring to the sleepaway camp. And so I packed everything up. And one day, she picked me up, and we started driving down there. But before I left, my parents did tell me one thing. They said, you have to be on your best behavior. You cannot curse. You cannot make fun of the Bible. You have to be polite. You can't even say hell. People will be offended because this wasn't just Lutherans that I was going to hang out with. It was born-again Christians, some Catholics. Any denomination that had kids that needed to get confirmed went to this camp. And I learned very quickly that these people were much more religious than I was. And also, I had made a slight mistake. I had forgotten a pillow. And so when I got there, I told the choir director, I'm like, oh my God, I forgot a pillow. And she's like, don't worry about it, I'll find you one. So she goes around to every one of the youth pastors, all the pastors that are there, and are asking, Matt doesn't have a pillow? And she's saying it just too loud. And so now all of the kids think I'm destitute. Like he can't even bring a pillow to the sleepaway camp. And so I have trouble meeting people initially, and I have this just awkwardness of I don't know how to communicate with people, and I don't know how to express myself if I can't make fun of the Bible, if I can't... Not that I cursed a lot, but who am I supposed to be? And so I get put into my Bible study group. It's 4 kids, including myself, and then our youth pastor. Our youth pastor is named Nate, but he spells his name N8. We call him Nate with an 8. And one of the kids in my class, or my group, he had created his own Christian D&D. because he had gotten in trouble for playing D&D. And so all of the apostles were the different classes that you could play as, except for Judas, who was the bad guy. It was really an inventive game. I was in the nerd group. Is that not clear? Okay. And I had trouble meeting people. I tried to talk to a kid that really liked basketball, and I'm like, "You're so good at basketball," and he's like, "Yeah, I am good at basketball, and it's only through Jesus that I'm so good." I'm like, "I don't think Jesus is making those layups." You're very good. And so I wasn't really meeting people outside of my group. And then the first night at dinner, we were eating in a cafeteria, and they said, after dinner, we're going to do a talent show, but it's going to be a surprise. Anybody that has a card under their chair has to perform. And one of the youth pastors had a guitar, of course, and he did an Elvis impersonation, of course. They put that one under his seat, but he didn't want to do it for some reason. So he took one of his kids and had them put it under my chair. And so when it was time to look, I looked under and I'm like, "Elvis, I don't know how to play a guitar." And I go up and I'm like, "I don't really know how to do this. I don't know how to do an Elvis impersonation." They're like, "Oh, it's okay. Do you know how to do anything else?" I'm like, "I can do some other impressions." And so I go up and I start into a Christopher Walken impression. And Nate with an 8 very quickly is like, "No, no, 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 no." Christopher Walken, Pulp Fiction, at this time, the prophecy movies, where he plays the Antichrist. Not a good thing for these kids. So I switch to something else and I do Arnold Schwarzenegger. And everybody's like, "This is amazing. I can't believe," and it's not a very good impression, but people think it's amazing. So like eventually, throughout the rest of the evening and into the next day, people are coming up to me and they're talking to me and like, "Oh, say this Bible verse. This is my favorite Bible verse. Say it as Arnold." And I'm like, "All right, yeah, if this is how I'm gonna meet people, this is how I'm gonna meet people." And then part of the way through that day, I noticed that Nate with an 8 is acting kind of weird. And then all of the other youth pastors are acting weird around me, and all of the like supervising pastors are being weird as well. And they're like not making eye contact, they're not talking to me as much. It's just something seems weird. And so I go back to the break room and I go to the cabinet where we put all of our cell phones, because we were not allowed to have our cell phones for this weekend, because the risk of us playing Snake was too much. That's how long ago this was. That's what I had on my phone. And I get my phone out and I call my parents. And I very briefly talked to them about how uncomfortable I've been and how things seem to be going well. And my dad stops me. He's like, "Matt, I got bit by a dog. I'm gonna be okay. But I'm gonna get some stitches. I just want you to know." I'm like, "Okay, thank you." And I hang up the phone. And as I'm going back to the cabinet to put it away, Nate with an 8 walks in. And I had not seen this person upset in my life. He's been a very kind soul, but I've obviously disappointed him by breaking out my cell phone. He's like, "Matt, I'm disappointed in you, but we can talk about that in a minute. I need to create a space here where we can talk about something serious. And so are you comfortable with that? Because I want to make sure we have that space together." And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, Nate with an 8. That sounds like a good idea." And so we sit down and he puts his arm on my shoulder. He's like, "Matt, might be hard to hear, and I don't want you to panic or get upset. But we found out this morning that your dad got bitten by a dog." And I'm like, "Yeah, Nate, I know. That's who I was just on the phone with." And he's like, "So you don't need to be consoled and like talk through this?" I'm like, "No, I know about it." He's like now he's disappointed because he can't do the thing that he's been building up all day to do. He's like, "Okay, fine. But don't use your phone anymore." I'm like, "Fine." And the rest of the day goes fine. The next day goes fine. And at the end of the weekend, we have a festival, like awards festival. And everybody's group gets up. Everybody gets an award that all of their group members have voted on for them. And everybody gets recognized. And it's beautiful. And my group goes up and everybody's like talking about the Christian D&D that we were doing and all of these other things. And then they get to me and they're like, Matt, do Arnold. And everybody that's in here says, do Arnold, do Arnold. I'm like, okay. And so I do John 3:16 as Arnold Schwarzenegger. I will do that for you now. And so God so loved the world that he gave his only son to die so that whoever believes in him can have eternal life. It's not the best. And I get done, people clap and they cheer, and then I recognize that my choir director's there, and Nate's there, all these people, but my parents aren't there. And the choir director's like, hey, Matt, I'll drive you home. I'm like, okay. And we get into the parking lot, my parents are there. We're so sorry, we're late, things got out of hand. I'm like, it's fine, I'll go home with you. I load my stuff in the car, we get in the car, we're a mile down the road, and they're like, oh, so how was it? I'm like, well, it's kind of upsetting that you weren't there. It's kind of upsetting that you didn't help me pack, so I didn't have a pillow, and everybody thought I was destitute. But I know how you can make it up to me. And they're like, fine, do whatever you want. And I'm like, and so I cursed the entire ride home. And we pull into our driveway, and I go into my room, and I put my stuff away, and I lay my head on my pillow, and I sleep soundly for the first time in a week. Thank you, everybody.